So for the clinicians in the room, I want to push you to even think, or for everybody, let's think even beyond the idea of associations to thinking more broadly. This is a table that I often, when I'm teaching in clinical psych, I often ask the graduate students to think about when understanding mental health difficulties in general. It's very fitting for this idea of the person, the family, or the larger context. So think about a child if you're a clinician or an educator who you work with, or you're a parent, or if you're a person living on the spectrum. Think about kind of somebody you know, somebody outside of you, who might be having difficulties. This kind of table suggests that there might be a number of different dimensions that we can think about a problem, or variables, factors that might be important. Certainly, factors related to the person. So they suggest a few. They say, think about, are there any biological factors that might be involved, any psychological factors, and maybe any social relationship or social environmental factors that might be at play here. But it's not just about what has caused the problem, but also, which is what they call, but there's a broader sense. Maybe a person is living in a situation that didn't actually cause the problem, but put them at more risk of developing difficulties for other reasons. For example, we know that poverty and social disadvantage is highly related to mental health difficulties. Those experiences of social disadvantage might not directly lead to an anxiety disorder, but we know that in terms of a context, they place a person at much greater risk. We know this for youth in the general population and for youth with developmental disabilities. So there's a whole dimension of what might predispose somebody to develop mental health issues that don't actually cause those mental health difficulties at play. They put somebody at greater risk. Then there might be factors that precipitate these kind of ASD stress, these stressors that we talked about, that are directly kind of come right before or lead to those anxiety issues or the mental health issues. And then once you have them, are there a set of factors that maintain those kind of issues over time? I don't know about you, but I've had panic attacks before. I actually remember coming to BC, coming up on stage, not today, I'm doing okay right now, but coming up on stage about to talk and thinking to myself, wow, I'm having a panic attack. Right? My heart's beating really fast, and I'm not going to go through all the symptoms because then I'll actually start to have it. But you know, I had that kind of experience, and there was precipitating events. They were kind of, I was waiting, there was a big audience, there's all these things happening there. You know, that kind of triggered that experience. But I also didn't have factors that maintain that experience afterwards. Right, that kept it going after I got off the stage and the next time I got up on a stage and so on. So this kind of framework asks us to think about what puts us at risk, what triggers those kinds of difficulties, what maintains those difficulties over time, and what are the protective factors that we have or that we're missing in our life to help us when we experience those difficulties. Okay? And let's think about those, not just that things that I'm carrying forward with me, like maybe I'm genetically predisposed to have an anxiety disorder, but what also might be kind of things in terms of the way I think about the world and the way I experience the world, my psychology, or aspects of those different factors in my environments. Okay? So when we think about mental health and autism, maybe we can think about biological factors and psychological factors and different kinds of social factors, both in terms of what might put somebody at risk, might trigger mental health difficulties, might maintain those over time, or might actually protect against them. Right? Because people have tremendous resilience in their life and protective factors. Is that fair? When we think even beyond mental health and we think about health in general, it's very easy to Google health, or World Health Organization and context, and you come up with these kinds of amazing figures, like developmental contextual processes, where the person, the child, might be at the center of the experience. But then within that kind of center experience, that health itself, the focus, we have family-level determinants or community-level determinants or even societal-level determinants. I'm not going to go through each one of them. The beauty of being a keynote is I don't have to. I get to show you a kind of an idea and then move on. So the idea here really is that we are really an experience, a product of these very multi-level determinants, okay, that interact with each other and influence our experience over time. And not only is this a one direction in terms of like all of these things are impacting me and I'm the end of the equation, but there's a transactional process here. Right? There's a flow here, and we've talked about this before. Richard Lerner's model of positive youth development, I think, is very apt when we think about mental health. The frameworks of positive youth development posit that at the central of development are aspects of thriving, aspects of well-being. Do we develop competence? Do we develop confidence? Do we experience connections with others, meaningful connections with others, both family and outside of family? Do we develop and have a sense to experience moral character? Are we cared for, and can we care for others? So within these constructs, when we think about mental health, I often tell people, mental health is not just the absence of symptoms, right? It's not the absence of anxiety which makes me mentally healthy, not truly mentally healthy. But these kinds of factors really contribute to the positive nature of mental health. Right? So at the core of positive youth development are these positive factors. And the more we have these factors, the more we're able to contribute to ourselves in healthy ways, to others, and to society at large. And the less we experience these factors, the more likely it is we're going to have internalizing and externalizing difficulties, mental health difficulties. Now, those things aren't mutually exclusive. A person can thrive in many contexts and also struggle with mental health problems. Okay? But there are these associations, these tensions, or these interactions that go on in our experience, in our development over time. And what leads to this kind of process? What helps us develop in these positive ways? There are things that we all bring to the table. There are strengths that we all have, and those strengths vary. They're individualized, right? Whether it's in intellectual functioning or musical ability or my physical strengths. We all have these kinds of strengths. Whether I'm very academically oriented or physically oriented, right? We all have different kinds of levels. We bring this to the table, to the opportunity to thrive. But those have to align with our contexts. I might have all the strengths in the world, but if you put me in an environment that is deprived and that doesn't provide me with the opportunities to succeed or to experience, there's only so far I'm going to get. Now, does that mean I'm never going to do well? No, of course not. This is not a fatalistic or deterministic kind of model. But what it does say is that this alignment between the kind of assets or strengths that we have in our environments and our internal strengths, that together that fosters this kind of healthy development over time. So maybe when we think about mental health and autism, we want to think about those strengths that a person has, as well as the importance of the contexts and how this is kind of an interactive process both for mental health difficulties, but also for thriving. So I just said that. So mental health is not just symptom alleviation. Okay? Mental health, if I asked you how mentally healthy you are right now, you would not say to me, I'm mentally healthy because I have a T-score of 64 on the CBCL. Okay? I'm just below the cutoff, so I'm mentally healthy. Okay? You would talk about these other factors often in terms of mental health. Unless you're a clinician or a researcher, then you would say a T-score of 64.